Hi everyone, Gene here. Welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, where every single week we answer the most common and uncommon questions about tapping and EFT so you can get the most out of your tapping practice, so you can take the action you want, and you can move forward in a productive way. I know I've mentioned this a number of times over the last few weeks, but it's something that is really super important. The way most people find a podcast is from a recommendation from a friend. So I would hope you would be willing to think of someone in your life who is into tapping or who is into transformation, who is interested about this stuff, and you would let them know about the podcast. So in just a moment, what I want you to do is I want you to hit pause on this episode because according to the statistics, 86% of you are listening to this right now on one of your smartphone devices. Send a friend a text message, tell them that they should be listening to the podcast. Tappingpodcast.com will get them all of the information regardless of the device that they're listening on. If you happen to be listening to this on your desktop, open up your mail program right now, send a friend an email, let them know about the podcast. It is an amazing labor of love. Every single week, I'm thinking about what I want to share, and we have some amazing interviews coming up that I know that you're going to appreciate and your loved ones are going to appreciate as well. So let's multiply that effort, because every single time transformation happens in another person's life, it makes all of our lives better. It makes the world a better place. Thank you very much for this indulgence. Let's jump into today's show. This is Gene Monterastelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 336, originally aired November 7th, 2018. Hi everyone, I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today we are continuing our 5-part series of the most common questions that are asked by people to me through my inbox on social media about tapping and how we move forward. If you missed last week's episode, we talked about how to make tapping a routine because people always say, it's a great thing and I don't use it. Episode 335 can be found at tappingpodcast.com. Go back and listen to that. Today, we're going to be talking about dealing with the same issue over and over again and why we do that. Before we jump into that, I just wanted to thank all of the supporters of the Tapping Q&A podcast. Every single month, we take a certain percentage of those donations that support the podcast, and we actually give it away through Kiva. Kiva is this amazing organization that gives microloans to people all over the world. And the really cool thing is after we loan the money out and the loan is paid back, I get to relend it again and again and again. So we're getting a chance to multiply that force. This month, the loan went to Esperanza. Esperanza lives in Costa Rica and she's a beekeeper. And so she's in the process of adding more hives so she can produce more honey, so she can continue to support her family through that work. If you would like to support the Tapping Q&A podcast and have the opportunity to get some amazing gifts and have the opportunity to be a part of this loan that we make every single month to small business owners all over the world, all you need to do is go to tappingqa.com/support, tappingqa.com/support. There's a link in the show notes so you can see where that is. So we're continuing the series on questions that are most commonly asked. And this week we're dealing with why is it that I keep dealing with the same issue over and over again? I spend time tapping on it. I'm thoughtful about it. I watch videos. I use scripts. I might even work with a practitioner, and I'm just not making the progress I want. I even regularly have this conversation with my clients. It will be 5 or 6 sessions into multiple months of work. And my clients will say something like, Gene, I really enjoy our time. You are charming. This is lots of fun, but I don't feel like we're actually making any progress. And in those moments, what I will do is I'll go, great, I appreciate the feedback. Let's pull out your intake form and let's take a look and see what has actually happened. And then what we're able to do is we're able to compare the current moment to where they started. And there's this recognition that transformation actually has happened. So there are 3 reasons why we feel like we keep dealing with the same issue over and over again. 2 of those reasons are like the example I just gave. they are a perception that we're dealing with the same issue over and over again. And the third reason is how we kind of do keep dealing with the same issue over and over again. So it's important to keep these three things in mind when you are frustrated with the amount of progress it doesn't feel like you're making, or it's a good thing to keep in mind when you begin to work on a new issue so that you're positioning yourself in a way so it is able to unfold in a way where you're appreciating the progress that is happening. So reason number one, why we feel like we keep dealing with the same issue over and over again is the phenomenon of the new normal. And so what this is about is when things change, we adopt to the change very, very quickly, and we forget what the old way is like. As a practical example, last year about this time, I got the new iPhone 10. And the new iPhone 10 doesn't have the home button on it like the other ones. Like there's no button that you push. It's all just screen. And so it's a new form factor, and so you use it in a new way. So I got the new phone, and it took me a couple of days to get used to the new way of interacting with the phone because the button wasn't there and I had to interact with it differently. A week after I got used to the new phone, I was at a conference where a friend of mine wanted me to videotape some of the stuff that he was doing on stage, and so he handed me his older iPhone. And it took me about a minute to figure out how to actually video him. Now, keep in mind, this is a phone 10 days earlier I owned. But because I had moved to the new operating system, my brain just let go of the old operating system because it was no longer useful. So we adopt to what we are dealing with and we forget what comes before. How that shows up in transformation is, let's take pain, for example. Let's say that you have a knee injury, and on the SUD scale of 0 to 10, you would describe the pain as a 7. And so you and I do some tapping, and all of a sudden the pain level is a 4. And you're very happy about that because we've almost reduced the pain by half. And so you wake up tomorrow and the pain level is only a 4, and you're still appreciative of that fact. And you wake up the next day and the pain level is a 4, and you're still appreciative of that fact. And you wake up the next day and the only thing that you notice is, I'm in pain and I hate being in pain. So 4 has become the new normal, and you have forgotten what it was like to be at a 7. Because the further distance you get from the old discomfort, the more likely you are to forget it. So it feels like you're dealing with the same issue, which is the pain in your knee. But it's not the same issue, because the issue before was a 7 and now the issue is a 4. Now, you might be saying, well, that's just semantics. It's a lower level. For me, it's a different issue, because when it's a 4, it could actually be a different problem. That we've solved problem number 1, which is reduce some of the pain, and now there's problem number 2 that is there. The same thing can happen with a fear. I might be afraid of speaking in public, and that fear is at a 7, and we tap on the fact that you're afraid that you're going to lose your place. And we get that all taken care of, and now the fear of speaking in public is only a 4 because you're comfortable with that. But in that 4, what is left is you're afraid you're going to be judged. So even though we only had one number of discomfort, it was a couple of issues that were joined together. And if you're still afraid at a 4, then it doesn't feel like you're making any progress and you're still dealing with the same issue. So the phenomenon of the new normal makes it really easy for us to miss the progress that we are making, and it feels like we're dealing with the same issue. The second reason why it can feel like we're dealing with the same issue, and it's very related to the first, is how we understand the transformation in relation to the action that we are taking. So this is an analogy that I have actually been using quite a bit over the course of the last 2 months with my clients. And so what I want you to imagine is I want you to imagine that you are standing next to a lake on a beach. And the reason why it's a lake is because I don't want you to imagine waves coming in and out. But you're standing at the edge of the water and there's no waves coming in and out. And the water is 3 inches from your toes. So as you look down, you can only move forward 3 inches before you get wet. And that's kind of like, imagine the water being a fear or an issue or something that is holding you back. And so we do a bunch of tapping and you feel better and you have more confidence. And as that happens, imagine that the water is receding away because that fear is getting smaller. But because the fear is getting smaller, you take advantage of all of this new land that you get to walk on. So what you do is you walk up to the edge of the water again because you're moving forward, because you now have the opportunity to do that. Now, from this new position, if you look down at your feet, the water is still only 3 inches away from your feet. So the distance from where you are to where the edge of what is comfortable is still exactly the same. And what you've done is you have forgotten that you have walked forward and there's now all of this new land that you can walk on. But because you're trying to move forward, you've pushed yourself to the edge. So again, the fear is still there and it's the same distance from us. So it feels as if we're dealing with the exact same issue because we've lost track of the context of how far we've moved. And we're only looking in relation between where we are and where our struggle is. And so when we do this, we mistake the fact that we haven't made progress for the relationship between us and the fear. And hopefully you are in a circumstance that as you are clearing fears, you're giving yourself the opportunity to move forward and try new things. A perfect way of thinking about this is thinking about speaking in public. So at the beginning, you might be in a situation where speaking in public is not something you are comfortable at all with. And so we do some work, and all of a sudden you feel good enough that when you are at a meeting at work and there's 10 of you sitting around the circle, you now feel comfortable enough to speak in public and you can share your idea. But because your idea is so good, your boss wants you to share it with the whole team. So now you're in a situation where you have to stand in front of 25 people. It's not a circle. Everybody aren't on the same level, but you're now standing in front of the group and you're having to share from that position. And all of a sudden you're nervous again. So we tap and we tap and we tap. And all of a sudden you are super comfortable presenting in front of 25 people. And the presentation goes so well, the boss wants you to give the presentation to the entire company. And now you have to speak in front of 125 people. And once again, you're worried and you're afraid. So the entire time over the arc of this story, you're afraid of speaking in public. And so every single time you and I tap together, we're tapping on the fact that you're afraid of speaking in public. So it feels as if you're dealing with the exact same issue. But we've had 3 radically different contexts. Me sitting around a conference room table with 10 people, me standing in front of 25 people, me standing in front of 125 people. And because those are different, they're actually different issues, but they feel the same. The analogy with the water at our feet. The water is at my feet, sitting around a table with 10 people. We tap, the water recedes, but you walk to the edge of the water because now you're speaking in front of 25 people, and so on. And so it's important for us to recognize that even though we name the problem the same, speaking in public, it's really a different problem each time. The third reason why it feels like we keep dealing with the same issue is because in some cases, we actually are dealing with the same issue over and over again. But what we don't realize is we're dealing with the issue on a different level. So let's pretend that the issue that we're tapping for is feeling comfortable inside of my own skin around other people. And we tap on this issue and you feel better. And then as time passes, you notice again that you're uncomfortable being around these people and being comfortable inside of your own skin. But what you don't realize is before you were uncomfortable with talking about the news of the day. The next level you're uncomfortable talking about, you get comfortable with that, but then you become uncomfortable talking about the work that you do. And then you get through that, and then you worry about talking about your personal life. And so what happens when we're doing that, because we're passing through the same issue over and over again, it's like going up a spiral staircase. If you look at someone from above who is walking up a spiral staircase and you're straight above them, it literally looks like they're walking in a circle. They're just going round and round and round. But if you're looking at them from the side, what you do is you see them going up, and what's happening is they're passing through the same spot. So if you imagine on a clock, at 12 o'clock, you're walking in the circle around and around, and 12 o'clock is that self-esteem issue. From above, it looks like as you walk in the circle, you pass through self-esteem, you pass through self-esteem, you pass through self-esteem. But when we look at it from the side, what happens is as you pass through self-esteem, you're 6 feet higher, and then you're 6 feet higher, and then you're 6 feet higher. So the issue is the same, but you're standing in a new place. And so you're actually moving forward, and in this case, moving up and making progress, but it's easy to miss that. So the big takeaway from all of this is, as we do the transformation process, it's really easy for us to miss the progress we're making, either because of 1, the new normal, 2, we keep pushing to the edge and only notice the edge, or 3, as we pass through an issue again and again, we're not recognizing that we're moving up. And it's important to recognize this because if you don't recognize this, it's really easy to be discouraged. It's really easy to be overwhelmed. It's really easy to feel as if the tapping and the time that you're investing in this is not working. That's why it's so important when you're working on an issue over time by yourself, or you're working on an issue over time with a practitioner, that you are documenting where you're starting and you're documenting where you're going along the way, so that it's really easy to recognize the progress that is happening. Sometimes the progress is self-evident. Sometimes it's like, I couldn't do this thing and now I could do it, and we don't need to be doing this. But lots of times, particularly these issues that we're creeping through, it's really easy to miss the change that is happening. And so keeping this in mind before you begin and documenting your progress along the way is going to make a huge difference in getting you to a place where you can see the actual progress that is happening, and you're going to be able to celebrate that, and you're going to be able to build on it. So that is the answer to question number 2 that I get most from clients, and I get most from readers and listeners just like you. Why do I keep dealing with the same issue over and over again? I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback on that. This is a little more of a analytical approach to thinking about the problem than some of the practical tapping that we do. So I would love to hear if this sort of information, this sort of conversation was useful. If you have questions, if you have comments, I would love to hear from you about this topic or anything else. Gene, Gene, at tappingqna.com is the easiest way to get a hold of me. If you're on the website, click the contact link. If you're inside of the Tapping Q&A app, which is free for both Android and Apple devices, if you hit the contact link, you can email me directly. I actually received 4 really nice emails that came right from inside of the app in the last 48 hours. I love hearing from you. I love hearing those questions. It guides the content that we create here on the podcast, and it gives me the ability to create the things that are going to serve you the best. Make sure you tell a friend about the Tapping Q&A podcast. Like I said, send them a text message, tappingpodcast.com. Send them an email. Invite other folks to engage in this conversation, because when one of us transforms, it creates a better place for all of us. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Monterastelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Monterastelli, Tapping Q&A 2016. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Monterastelli or Tapping Q&A.